It was supposed to be the happiest announcement of my life. At my birthday party, surrounded by my closest friends, I planned to reveal that I was expecting a baby. But instead, my partner surprised me with a box that contained not a gift, but a breakup note that read, "You're worthless. I'm leaving. I deserve more." Laughter filled the room as he turned and walked out. Everyone stared at me, waiting for a reaction. I just smiled. He had no idea what I was capable of. 2 months later, he was on my doorstep, drunk, shouting my name into the night. We'd been together a little over 3 years. His name was Marcus, and in the beginning, he was everything: attentive, charming, the kind of guy who actually listened when you talked. Within a year, we moved into a cozy, barely affordable apartment. Not ideal financially, but hey, who can afford anything in this city? We talked about the future. Maybe one day we'd buy a house, travel the world, have kids. I thought we were aligned. But Marcus always cared a little too much about appearances. The right clothes, the flashiest car, perfect Instagram posts. I brushed it off. Red flags are easier to spot in hindsight. About 4 months before the party, I started feeling off, constant nausea, drained energy. I took a pregnancy test on a whim, just to rule it out. But there they were, 2 pink lines. I stared at that tiny stick like it was written in a foreign language. I didn't tell Marcus right away. I needed time to process. The first person I told was my best friend, Nina. She brought wine to girls' night. I stuck to sparkling water. She knew immediately. Nina asked thoughtful questions, helped me think through everything: maternity leave, money, Marcus's potential reaction. We decided I'd tell him at my birthday. It was in 3 weeks, and we'd already planned a small get-together at our place. I thought it would be perfect, telling everyone I loved all at once. Spoiler, it wasn't. The days before the party were weird. I was sick nearly all the time, trying to hide it. Marcus didn't notice. He came home later, was on his phone constantly, emotionally distant. I chalked it up to work stress. My birthday landed on a Saturday. I spent the morning decorating while Marcus went to grab the cake. He was gone 3 hours. When he finally returned, our guests were arriving. Nina and her husband, our friends Jake and Tom, my cousin Bree, and even Chloe from college. The vibe was light, cheerful. I was sipping sparkling water disguised as vodka. Nina kept giving me small nods across the room, silently cheering me on. I planned to share the big news after dessert. Then, around 9 p.m., Marcus tapped his glass and called for attention. My stomach dropped. Was he about to propose? Did he find out about the baby? Either way, it felt off. He launched into a heartfelt speech about how much he loved me, how lucky he was. He looked me in the eyes, so sincere, then handed me a small, beautifully wrapped box. I opened it. No ring, just a folded note. The words are scorched into my memory. "I'm done. You're nothing. You'll never be enough." I froze. I looked at him, certain it was a sick joke. It wasn't. His face was smug, cold. Then he laughed, not just a chuckle, a full, cruel laugh. A few guests nervously laughed too, thinking it was a prank. Then Marcus walked out. Silence. The baby announcement died in my throat. Everyone turned to me. No one said a word. Except Nina. She crossed the room, took the note from my hand, read it, and whispered, "He's a bastard." That broke the silence. Suddenly, the room filled with voices: confusion, shock, outrage. And me? I just smiled. Not because I wasn't heartbroken. I was. Not because I wasn't humiliated. Absolutely. But because Marcus had no idea what was coming. He didn't know I was pregnant. He didn't know I'd already seen his secret credit card charges, hotel stays, restaurants, jewelry. He didn't know I'd read his texts to someone named C on his smartwatch while he showered. 2-factor authentication would have been smart, Marcus. Most of all, he didn't know I wasn't the kind of woman to fall apart. I'm the kind who gets strategic. So I smiled. I thanked my guests for coming. I sliced the cake. I passed it out like I was hosting a party, not attending the funeral of my relationship. Maria, sorry, Chloe, suddenly felt sick and left. Yeah, we'll come back to her. The rest stayed, offered hugs, help, and even a few murder alibis. Mostly joking. Maybe. By midnight, everyone was gone, except Nina. She insisted on staying. When we were finally alone, I broke. The tears came. The pain, the betrayal, the pregnancy, all of it hit me like a wave. Nina didn't say much. She just held me. No cliches, no, everything happens for a reason. She just stayed. And when I was ready, I told her everything. Nina wasn't surprised when I told her I was pregnant. She said she'd suspected something for weeks. Then I showed her what I'd found: the credit card charges for hotels and gifts, and screenshots of Marcus's messages, full of emojis and flirty plans with C. We both knew exactly who that was, especially after Chloe's dramatic exit from the party. We talked all night about the baby, the betrayal, what to do next. Nina asked if I planned to tell Marcus about the pregnancy. I said yes, but not now. He would find out on my terms when I was ready. And as for the affair and the lies, I wasn't going to stoop to petty revenge, but I would make sure the truth came out. Nina gave me this half-proud, half-worried look, like she didn't know whether to hug me or be afraid of what I'd do next. I just laughed, really laughed, for the first time in days. Later, lying in bed alone, my hand on my stomach, I made 2 promises. 1, I'd give my child a safe, loving home, no matter what. 2, I would come out of this stronger than ever. Marcus thought he ended our story. What he didn't know is, I was just turning the page. And if there's one thing all those late-night true crime podcasts have taught me, it's that the best revenge isn't loud. It's planned, patient, and perfectly timed. The following day, I woke up to the smell of pancakes. Nina was still there, acting totally normal, while also checking on me every 5 minutes. She made me eat. I managed a few bites before the nausea returned. Marcus didn't show up that day. No calls, no texts, nothing, which was both a relief and a gut punch. I spent the day making lists, like some kind of crisis mode spreadsheet queen. Finances, doctors, apartment stuff. I wasn't ready to face my feelings, but I could get organized. Nina helped me box up some of Marcus's things. Not everything, just enough to make a statement. Meanwhile, my phone kept buzzing. Most messages were kind. A few people were more interested in drama than concern, but one name was notably missing: Chloe. Monday came. I called in sick to work, a rare move for me. I also scheduled a doctor's appointment to confirm the pregnancy. Around lunchtime, while researching tenant rights, since our lease had both our names, I got a text from Marcus. "I'll be there at 7 to pick up my stuff. Don't be home." Excuse me? I stared at the message for a solid minute. Then I replied, "No." That's it. Just no. He called immediately. I declined. Then I called Nina. By 6:30, my apartment was full. Jake, Tom, Bree, even Lana extended her trip to be there. They weren't just friends. They were my shield. Marcus showed up at exactly 7. His expression when he saw everyone? Priceless. He tried to play it cool, but Jake, who's 6 feet 4 inches and built like a human fortress, handed him a single suitcase and said calmly, "That's all you're getting for now." Marcus demanded to know what was going on. I sat on the couch, perfectly composed, and said, "Consider yourself lucky I haven't changed the locks." He tried to argue, but the look I gave him must have said enough. He muttered something about me always needing attention. Rich, coming from the guy who dumped me in front of an audience. Once he left, I cried again. Not for him, but for the future I thought we'd have. The life I'd imagined. The child who deserved better. The next morning, I called a locksmith. Then came Chloe. Well, not directly, but a message came from Sergio. He'd seen Marcus and Chloe together months ago. He and Tom didn't want to jump to conclusions back then. But now, it was clear. So Chloe, who'd eaten at my table, who'd hugged me at parties, had been sleeping with Marcus. There's betrayal, and then there's that. But I didn't confront either of them. Yet, I chose to wait. Watch. Gather facts. I guess I'd listened to one too many crime shows, but patience seemed smarter than drama. In the meantime, I got my life in order. The pregnancy was confirmed. 10 weeks, I saw a lawyer about the lease and finances. I opened a solo bank account and froze the joint credit card. I didn't tell anyone else I was pregnant. Not yet. It wasn't denial. It was strategy. 2 weeks later, Marcus texted again, wanted to talk, said he'd collect more of his things. I agreed to meet, on my turf, in a public place during daylight. We met at a coffee shop. He looked awful. Dark circles, messy clothes, jittery hands. He tried to explain, something about feeling trapped, needing space, a clean break. I let him ramble. Then I asked him one question. Are you happy with Chloe? He froze, stuttered, denied everything. I stopped him, told him I knew, about the affair, the hotels, the secret credit card, the jewelry, and most importantly, I was done playing dumb. I told him he could pick up the rest of his stuff that Saturday, with a friend present. No more conversations unless through lawyers. When I mentioned the word lawyer, his face actually twitched. He tried to object, said we could work it out. I reminded him this was his decision. He ended things. I was just accepting it. As I stood up to leave, he grabbed my wrist. What is it with men and wrist grabbing? He asked how I was going to pay the rent alone. And that's when I saw it. The truth. Marcus didn't miss me. He missed the safety net. He'd been coasting on my income for months, pretending to be the provider while draining me. So I smiled and said, unlike you, I know how to save money. Then I walked out, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. That Saturday, just like we'd planned, Jake stayed behind at my apartment while Marcus came to collect the rest of his things. I wasn't there. Instead, I went to a prenatal yoga class, first one I'd ever tried, and it turned out to be exactly what I needed. Highly recommended if you're growing a human and trying not to snap from stress. When I got back home, the space felt emptier, but also more mine. I started rearranging furniture that night, a small act of reclaiming. Over the next few weeks, I settled into a new routine. Doctor appointments, budgeting, vitamins, work. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something new. And as for Marcus and Chloe? Well, according to mutual acquaintances, okay, Sergio, who hears everything, their magical affair was already starting to crumble. Apparently, Chloe thought she was getting Prince Charming. Instead, she got a guy who was unemployed, broke, and emotionally unavailable. What a shocker. The real turning point came about a month after our coffee shop meeting. I was at the grocery store scanning shelves for prenatal vitamins when, yep, cart bump. Chloe. Her reaction? A cocktail of surprise, guilt, and defiance. She mumbled a hello, said I looked good. I told her she looked tired. She did. Then she dropped the bomb. Marcus said you two were already separated when we got involved. I wouldn't have, if I'd known. I raised an eyebrow. Didn't respond. She scrambled to justify herself, half apology, half defense. I told her it didn't matter now. She had him. Enjoy. As I walked away, she called after me. He's not what I thought. I turned, looked her dead in the eyes and said, sounds like a you problem. A few weeks later, I started showing. Just a small bump, but noticeable. I decided I was done hiding. First, I told my boss, who was wonderful, offering flexible hours. Then, I told close friends and family. I knew word would eventually reach Marcus, and I was fine with that. Let it happen. I wasn't ashamed of this baby. It was happening with or without his involvement. 7 weeks after our breakup, the text storm began. Is it true? Are you really pregnant? Why didn't you tell me? We need to talk. Call me. I ignored all of it, not out of spite. I just wasn't ready. Then the tone shifted. I have rights. You can't keep my child from me. I'm coming over. That last one got my attention. I finally responded. Told him if he showed up uninvited, I'd call the police. I'd reach out when I was ready, not before. He went quiet for 2 days. Then, just like the title of this story hinted, he showed up. It was after 11 p.m. I was in bed reading a pregnancy book when I heard the car door slam. Then footsteps. Then banging on the front door, not knocking, banging. And then, Lena! Open the door! We need to talk about our baby. It was Marcus. drunk, crying. I froze. For a moment, I didn't know what to do. Call the police? Hide? Then I heard something that made me stand. Sobbing. He was out there, alternating between demands and desperation. He said he made a mistake. He said he wanted to talk. Said it was his baby, too. And though I didn't feel sorry for him, not exactly, I recognized something. His great escape, his dramatic exit, his fantasy life with Chloe, none of it had worked out. Reality had found him, in the form of a baby, financial ruin, and a door he no longer had a key to. I put on a robe and stepped up to the door. Didn't open it, just said, "You're drunk. Go home." He yelled, begged to see me, to know if it was true. So I told him, through the door. Yes, I'm pregnant. 18 weeks. And yes, it's yours. But this is not how we talk about it. Leave. There was a thud against the door. His fist, his head. Then, softly, he mumbled, "Chloe left me, said I wasn't who she thought I was, said I lied about everything." I couldn't help it. I said, "Sounds familiar." He laughed, a hollow, broken sound, said he messed up, begged to come inside. Just talk. I paused, then told him, "Tomorrow. Main Street Cafe, 10 a.m., sober, or don't bother showing up." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "I'll be there." I heard his footsteps, uneven, fade away. A car drove off, not his, thankfully. At least he was sober enough to call a ride. Back in bed, my phone lit up. A message from him. "I'm sorry, for everything, for the party, for the note, for tonight. I'll fix it." I didn't respond. Words are easy. Marcus had always been good with words. I needed actions now, especially with a baby on the way. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe a few minutes early. I wasn't sure if Marcus would show, but at 9:55 a.m., he walked in. And wow, he looked rough. Bloodshot eyes, same wrinkled clothes from the night before, jittery leg under the table like he was trying to shake off nerves through the floor. He'd already ordered a decaf latte for me. Nice gesture, except I'd switched to herbal tea weeks ago. Another example of him assuming what I wanted instead of actually knowing. He started talking right away, a blur of apologies. For the party, the cheating, the money, the drinking. It was like watching someone read a script they hoped would undo a disaster. I didn't say much. There's a weird kind of power in silence when someone expects a reaction. When he finally ran out of breath, I asked a simple question. "What do you want?" He blinked, looked caught off guard, then mumbled something about being involved, doing the right thing, and this one made me almost laugh. Maybe trying again. Trying again? I actually laughed, not out of spite, just shock. Then I got serious. I laid it out for him, clear and calm. I told him I'd already seen a lawyer. We'd discussed custody, child support, co-parenting expectations. And no, he wasn't being kept away from his child, but he'd have to earn a place, show up, consistently, be reliable, be present, not just when it's convenient or social media worthy. He kept trying to steer the conversation back to us. What we had, what we could have again. I redirected every time. I wasn't cold to be cruel. I was cold because I had a child to protect. Eventually, he called me calculating. I reminded him that his birthday stunt was exactly that. Calculated. But the difference? I was protecting someone. He was protecting his ego. That shut him up. Before I left, I handed him a folder. It had ultrasound photos, due dates, doctor information, and a draft of the support agreement my lawyer had prepared. I told him to look it over, get his own legal advice if needed, and let me know his decision. As I stood up, he grabbed my wrist again. Seriously, third time. Enough already. He asked if Chloe knew about the baby. I told him that wasn't my job. I hadn't told her, but I hadn't hidden it either. Then I gently pulled my arm free and walked out. In the weeks that followed, things started to settle. I focused on preparing the nursery, or rather, converting a corner of my bedroom into one. Nina and I spent 3 hours building a crib from IKEA. Honestly, those instructions might as well be in Klingon. I got a second-hand changing table, some used baby clothes, and the cutest little Star mobile from my mom. Money was tight, so I picked up extra freelance work, editing social media posts for small brands. Not glamorous, but it paid the bills. My mom sent some help too, both financial and emotional, though she did reorganize my kitchen, which drove me a little nuts. Marcus stayed somewhat in the background. Occasionally, he'd text to ask how the baby was or if I needed anything. I kept responses short, factual. Then came the incident. Yes, capital T, capital I was at Target, buying diapers in bulk, when I bumped into, guess who? Chloe. Again, only this time she wasn't defensive. She looked relieved. She asked how I was feeling, asked how far along I was. She even looked genuinely concerned. Then, out of nowhere, an apology. Not a fake one, not a passive-aggressive one. A real, thought-out, sincere apology. She told me that Marcus had told her we were basically done when they started hooking up, that I was holding him back, that he needed space to find himself. Classic. Then, plot twist, she found out he was cheating on her too. With someone else. I couldn't help but let out a tiny, ironic laugh. We ended up grabbing tea, no joke, and having this surreal conversation about how we'd both been lied to, manipulated, and discarded. Not by some villain, but by a man who was simply insecure, dishonest, and desperate for validation. Before we parted, she casually mentioned that Marcus had been fired from his job 2 weeks earlier. Thought I should know, since it could affect child support. I thanked her, went home, and sat in silence, processing. I wasn't thrilled. It complicated things, but I was grateful for the heads up. That evening, as I folded onesies and listened to a podcast, my doorbell rang. It was Marcus, sober but tired looking. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. He launched into a story about being set up at work, how it wasn't his fault, how things were falling apart. Then he asked if I'd seen Chloe. I told him yes. He didn't like that answer. His face did this twitchy thing that was almost comical. He got defensive, said we were all turning against him, accused us of teaming up. I reminded him he made this bed. Then, for once, he dropped the act. He said everything was falling apart. No job, no Chloe, no stability, and now, a baby on the way. He looked genuinely lost. For a moment I felt that old impulse, to help, to comfort. But then I remembered the birthday note. Worthless. So instead of comforting him, I gave him clarity. I told him he had two choices, spiral or rebuild. And for once, he listened. No excuses, no interruptions, just silence. Then he asked if we could talk more. Inside. I hesitated, but agreed, with the door open. Always leave the door open when someone's unpredictable. We sat at the kitchen table. For the first time, he asked real questions. About the baby, about plans, about me. And I realized something important. I didn't love Marcus anymore. But I wanted him to be okay. Not for him, but for our child. Before he left, he said thank you. Not for forgiveness, but for not hating him. I told him I didn't have time to hate. I had more important things to spend energy on. The next few weeks brought small but meaningful changes. Marcus got a new job. Not as prestigious, not as high-paying, but steady. He signed the child support agreement without a fight. He even enrolled in a parenting class at the community center. I wasn't exactly cheering him on, but I did feel a tiny bit of relief. He was making some effort. As my due date crept closer, the co-parenting framework we talked about started becoming reality. He attended doctor appointments, when invited. He helped finish assembling the crib after I finally gave up on deciphering the instructions. It wasn't perfect, but it was functional. Then, one afternoon, when I was 7 months pregnant, a package showed up at my door. It was from Marcus. Inside was a plain leather-bound journal and a note. For your thoughts, your plans, and all your true crime notes. You were never useless. I was just too selfish to see your worth. I didn't respond, but I did start using the journal, mostly to record the journey. Someday I'd tell our child the whole story, not to burden them, but because it's part of their beginning. And then, finally, the birth. Her name is Zoe. She arrived 6 weeks ago. Tiny, full head of hair and, Wouldn't you know it? Marcus's chin, the one feature of his "I'm not mad about her inheriting" labor was a blur. 32 hours of contractions, nurses, and a lot of screaming. Every YouTube vlog I watched about birth did not prepare me for reality. Marcus surprised everyone, especially me, by showing up at the hospital with a teddy bear so big it wouldn't fit through the doorway. Where did he think I was going to store that thing in a one-bedroom apartment? He stayed, the whole time. Awkward, anxious, and constantly checking his phone, but present. Nina was my anchor. When I thought I couldn't do it, when I was exhausted and terrified, she was right there reminding me, "You are doing it." When Zoe was finally placed on my chest, I felt this moment of absolute clarity. All the heartbreak, the betrayal, the chaos, it all led to her. And I wouldn't change a thing. Marcus cried when he held her. Not pretty movie-style tears, but messy, raw, blotchy-faced emotion. It was the first real thing I'd seen from him in a long time. The first weeks at home were chaos, sleep deprivation, feeding issues, diaper blowouts that defied the laws of physics. My mom came to stay for 2 weeks, a blessing and a challenge. She kept reorganizing my kitchen in ways that made zero sense. The next few weeks brought small but meaningful changes. Marcus got a new job. Not as prestigious, not as high-paying, but steady. He signed the child support agreement without a fight. He even enrolled in a parenting class at the community center. I wasn't exactly cheering him on, but I did feel a tiny bit of relief. He was making some effort. As my due date crept closer, the co-parenting framework we talked about started becoming reality. He attended doctor appointments, when invited. He helped finish assembling the crib after I finally gave up on deciphering the instructions. It wasn't perfect, but it was functional. Then, one afternoon, when I was 7 months pregnant, a package showed up at my door. It was from Marcus. Inside was a plain leather-bound journal and a note. "For your thoughts, your plans, and all your true crime notes. You were never useless. I was just too selfish to see your worth." I didn't respond, but I did start using the journal, mostly to record the journey. Someday I'd tell our child the whole story, not to burden them, but because it's part of their beginning. And then, finally, the birth. Her name is Zoe. She arrived 6 weeks ago. Tiny, full head of hair and, wouldn't you know it, Marcus's chin, the one feature of his "I'm not mad about her inheriting" labor was a blur. 32 hours of contractions, nurses, and a lot of screaming. Every YouTube vlog I watched about birth did not prepare me for reality. Marcus surprised everyone, especially me, by showing up at the hospital with a teddy bear so big it wouldn't fit through the doorway. Where did he think I was going to store that thing in a one-bedroom apartment? He stayed, the whole time. Awkward, anxious, and constantly checking his phone, but present. Nina was my anchor. When I thought I couldn't do it, when I was exhausted and terrified, she was right there reminding me, "You are doing it." When Zoe was finally placed on my chest, I felt this moment of absolute clarity. All the heartbreak, the betrayal, the chaos, it all led to her. And I wouldn't change a thing. Marcus cried when he held her. Not pretty movie-style tears, but messy, raw, blotchy-faced emotion. It was the first real thing I'd seen from him in a long time. The first weeks at home were chaos, sleep deprivation, feeding issues, diaper blowouts that defied the laws of physics. My mom came to stay for 2 weeks, a blessing and a challenge. She kept reorganizing my kitchen in ways that made zero sense. Marcus visited regularly, 3 times a week. Sometimes he brought helpful things like takeout or diapers. Other times, ridiculous outfits Zoe would outgrow in a week. A leather jacket for a newborn? Really? Our co-parenting was still rocky. He'd cancel last minute, show up late. But when I had a clogged milk duct and looked like death, he showed up with cabbage leaves and a heating pad. He was trying. Financially, things stabilized. The child support came on time. I was working part-time from home, managing social media for small brands. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid rent and bills. My landlord let me renew the lease in my name only. That was a small but powerful victory. The apartment changed. Baby gear everywhere, a new paint color on the walls. A sage green I picked just because it made me feel calm. It finally felt like my space. I still bumped into Chloe occasionally. Our city isn't that big. The last time I saw her, she was with a guy who called her babe every 5 seconds. She looked happy, or at least like she wanted to be. As for Marcus, he was doing better in some ways, worse in others. His new job wasn't great, according to Nina, who heard from Tom, who heard from a guy Marcus works with. Gotta love small-town gossip chains. He was living in a depressing studio and complaining a lot. And then, something unexpected happened. Growth. He told me, casually, that he'd started seeing a therapist. This from the man who once called therapy a scam for overthinkers. He started reading parenting books, joined a Facebook group for dads, made fewer excuses, asked more questions. And for the first time, it felt less like an act. Meanwhile, I had my own developments. Remember that part-time job? It came through a connection from Sergio. His sister worked at a startup and they needed help. The job was flexible and I could do it during Zoe's naps, when she actually napped. And then there was Eli. Yes, Eli. He was the grocery delivery guy. Tall, soft-spoken, wore a beanie even in 70-degree weather. At first, I barely noticed him, too sleep-deprived to register much, but he started leaving little notes with my deliveries. Suggestions, jokes. Once, a list of items other new parents liked. One day, I was particularly exhausted, hadn't showered in 3 days, wearing pajama pants with milk stains. He offered to help carry the water jugs into the kitchen. I hesitated, but something about him felt safe. We started talking. Turns out he's finishing his degree in environmental science. He helps take care of his sister's kids. That explains why he didn't run screaming from my baby gear war zone. Eventually, we exchanged numbers. For delivery updates. Yeah, right. He's come by for coffee a few times. Nothing serious, just conversation. It's nice, talking to an adult who doesn't want to dissect diaper brands or argue about sleep schedules. One day, Marcus came by for his visit just as Eli was leaving. His expression? Let's just say it was complicated. Later, he asked who Eli was. Casually, of course. I kept it vague. There wasn't much to tell. Yet. And frankly, it wasn't any of his business. Nina thinks I should go for it. I think I should go slowly. After everything, I've learned not to rush into anything, especially not romance. Right now, my focus is Zoe. Through everything, the mess, the heartbreak, the unexpected growth, one person stayed constant. Nina. When I felt like I was failing at motherhood, she showed up with iced coffee. Yes, my beloved caffeine is back now that breastfeeding's under control, and reminded me that every new parent feels like a disaster sometimes. When I needed to shower or just sit in silence, she took Zoe for walks. And then came the day. My birthday. 1 year since the party. 1 year since the box. But this time, no staged speeches, no cruel surprises. I had a small gathering at my apartment, just my people. Nina, Tom, Sergio, Bree, and a few others. Marcus stopped by briefly to drop off a gift, a bracelet with Zoe's birthstone. It was surprisingly thoughtful. He didn't stay long, just enough to acknowledge the day. I looked around the room, my living room, now filled with warmth, laughter, and baby toys. My daughter sleeping in her bassinet, the friends who stayed when things fell apart. And I felt something I hadn't expected. Gratitude. Not for Marcus, but for the transformation. I wasn't the same woman who stood frozen with a breakup letter in her hands a year ago. That woman was broken, betrayed, but fierce. This woman, she's rebuilt, stronger at the cracks. Will Eli become something meaningful? Maybe. Maybe not. Will Marcus continue growing? Hopefully. For Zoe's sake. Will I always live in this tiny apartment? Probably not. Maybe one day I'll find a home with a yard, a place where Zoe can run barefoot in the grass. But here's what I do know. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is the thing that reveals your best self. Not right away, not without pain, but eventually. Oh, And that giant teddy bear Marcus brought to the hospital? It's currently serving as a safety barrier to keep Zoe from rolling off the bed when I need 2 minutes to pee. So, I guess it found its purpose after all. And the infamous note? I kept it. It's tucked inside a memory box in Zoe's closet, along with her hospital bracelet, her first lock of hair, and the positive pregnancy test. One day, when she's older, I'll tell her the full story. Not to make her carry the weight, but to show her how far we've come, where her life began, and how her mom turned heartbreak into a whole new beginning.